So you just get to act natural.
Yeah, yeah. Good morning.
Like your usual charming self.
Exactly. I do have to say, Tiffany's here. We've got Rev. We've got Jessica. We've got Amy. People are joining. Hi, everybody. We are so happy you are here. Thank you for the hearts. Welcome to all the replay viewers. We are, hi, Jessica. We are here with John Coy, and you are not going to want to miss this. And when I say here, I mean Addendum Books, which we've talked about. It's on the corner of Randolph and Cleveland in St. Paul. If you are in the area, I would highly suggest you come here, whether you have kids or not, honestly. Hi, Julie. Julie wants to come, but she's in, Georgia, so that's going to be tricky. But it's like got the best atmosphere of any little bookstore ever. Road trip with Jessica. Jessica and Julie want a road trip out here. We've got Ann here, and Ann, our addendum lady. We call her our addendum lady because we love her. My kids are home from school, so yeah, have your son watch. That'd be awesome. I think he would like the book. Everybody, they'd all come if they wanted to. So I say road trip to Minnesota. You might want to wait till June. Just saying.
It's snowing now.
Well, it is snowing. And I didn't wear my mittens today because I was like, it's March. I know it's Minnesota, but really I want it to be spring, so I'm going to pretend I don't need my mittens. Okay, so I'm going to turn us all around, and I want you to take a look at John, just because you can look at him. And yeah, let's see. And look everybody, that is a tripod. Anne does not need to fix this or hold it or shoot it or do anything today. I know you're so proud of me, aren't you? Okay. Look at that. Look how simple that works.
Looks great. And here's a book.
You got a tripod. Well, actually, I didn't get a tripod. Everybody say hi to John. And make sure you give lots of hearts and share this. We really like John. And they're very proud of me for my tripod because I don't have one. This actually, guys, isn't my tripod. Addendum owners offered it to us. So Anne had to go pick it up. Okay, let's see here.
You didn't have to confess.
No, I didn't, but I thought I should. Thanks for sharing, Julie. And your color today for your hearts matches me. How cool is that? Oh, this is going to be a problem. Hi. Oh, I don't remember who you are. Thanks for inviting everybody, people. Look at this messy hair. Okay. Everybody, this is John. And he's a little taller than me. Wow, I'm going to have to sit on my feet.
Should we switch?
Maybe. And I'll hand things over to you.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
John, before we get started, we're going to see if we can get anybody else in here. I don't think a whole lot more people will show up right now, but maybe they will. Can you tell people your name and where you're from and what you do? We all know you're an author, but what kind of author you are.
Okay. My name is John Coy. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I write picture books, young adult novels, and a middle grade series called 4for4 series.
Right. Is that just its own series, or are you planning on expanding that into bigger?
That's its own series for now, yeah. But I would like to, I'm working on a new middle grade that would be a standalone middle grade.
Oh, that would be great. Just one. Standalone means one book.
Yes.
Don't worry, last time we talked about voice of a story, and I'm like, okay, let me tell you what that means. Okay, so let's see here. I think we could get started on reading our book. If you would like us to read, or not us, John is going to read the book. But if you would like John to read the book, everybody give us hearts. Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, before you start.
Maybe I'll switch to this chair for that.
Yeah, maybe you should. We want to make sure that we give credit where credit. We are using this book with permission from or by Learner Publishing. They are the publishers of this book. And you guys, it took a lot of work to get this. So I hope you enjoy it because it is a fantastic, beautiful book. Now, I'm going to take, you can just put that on your lap. I'm going to take the pictures so you can see them because...
I can do pictures, I think, John.
You think you can? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. We'll do it that way then. We'll try this since we have it. Okay. Here we go. It will look backwards, but it's not backwards for them.
Okay.
Okay, so there's their great gift. Here comes John. Go ahead.
Their great gift. This is brand new, just came out this week, and it's the first time I've ever gotten to work with the artist. The artist is the great photographer Wing Young Huey, and Wing and I have been friends for years, and we played basketball for years. And this is a book that's been a collaboration from start to finish. Wing made suggestions on text, and I got to be involved in design and selecting photos. It's called Their Great Gift, Courage, Sacrifice, and Hope in a New Land. I'll stand. I bet this will be easier. My family came here from far away because they dreamed of more. The journey was long and difficult, and when they arrived, they didn't know the language or how to do certain things. They made mistakes, and people laughed. Others didn't understand how much they'd sacrificed. They worked long, hard hours at difficult jobs. They got up early, stayed late.
Is that peanuts?
And took the extra shift. Ginger.
Okay.
Ginseng rather. They saved and did without and sent money back. They opened businesses and poured all that they had into them. They shifted between languages, between cultures, between places. They gave advice. Work hard. Do well in school. Never give up. They kept going day after day so we'd have choices that they didn't have. And now we're all here together with our own arrival stories. But one question keeps rising. What will we do with their great gift? The end?
Sort of.
Sort of. And then in back, we were each asked to write our own arrival stories. So this little girl here, that is my grandmother, and both of her parents are holding tight to her hand. They had lost a daughter to scarlet fever. And my grandma got the name, same name as the daughter who died. That often was done in those days. And then on this picture, this little guy, the youngest, is the photographer Wing Young Huey, and he is with his parents who and brother and sisters who came from another country.
Was Wing, was he born in the States?
He's born in the States. He's the only person in his family born in the United States. And my grandma, both her parents were born in Bavaria. They lived 14 miles from each other there, but did not know each other, but then met in St. Paul here in Minnesota and got married here.
That's awesome. Yeah. Where is Bavaria?
Southern Germany.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Like Bavarian cream.
Yep. Yep, exactly. And then on the last page, they asked us to talk about what the process was like of making the book. So both Wing and I talked about the process. And a lot of people don't realize how unusual it is for the artist and the writer to get to collaborate on each step of the way. So that was just a great gift, and the book turned out absolutely beautiful. Andrew Carr, editor to begin with, then Carol Hinz, editor, collaboration with them, and then Danielle Carnito and Zach Merrill at Lerner did just a fantastic job on the design.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you want to sit there or
Sure,
back there?
I'll sit here.
Okay. Okay, we hope you all really like that story. What I like about that story is that it's nonfiction.
It's nonfiction.
And like you said, it's not really that it's nonfiction. It's that it's a true story.
It's true. That's what the kids call it. They say, is it true? Is it true?
I've been kind of catching myself on that, going, okay, this is nonfiction. I mean, these are facts and stories that are true.
They're true.
And this is the fiction that also has true components in it.
That's right. That's right. But like when kids hear a book, at the end, what they say is that true?
Right.
Is that true? Yeah,
Right.
and they make that distinction, but that's what they call it true, so I'll call it true.
True, I love it. Okay, so I have a couple of questions for you. Why is it important to read real, true stories? Why is it important, especially for kids, to do that?
I don't think kids make the distinction that adults do. I think adults are much, much bigger on categories of nonfiction or fiction or where something gets shelved. But for kids, they just want a good story. It's like, is it a good story? And if it's a good story, they like it. And I think that's, interestingly enough, I think that's much more what we're moving back to is with the rise of, some of these great nonfiction books is let's just have great stories.
Right.
And if they're true, that's great. And if somebody invented them, that's great too.
That makes sense. So how do you distinguish between, so yesterday I was just shelving books at my daughter's 3rd grade class, and they have all these informational texts.
Yep.
And then all of the stories. Right. And some of them were, stories from, folklore stories, old stories that kind of don't fit into the bookshelves, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So how would you distinguish between the need for, because some of those aren't stories. Okay, so let's go back to the ones that aren't stories. How would you categorize the ones that are just articles, about the human body?
I think some of that is more informational. Okay. But, so much of that stuff can be done online now.
That's true.
That I think that some of that's going to change. Okay. And the other thing is even, if you're talking about human body, there can still be great stories about that. We've got great picture books on human body.
That's true.
And so I think part of what we're seeing is that, there's all kinds of different ways to convey information. I was just doing this with kids. I was just visiting schools in Africa, and two different classrooms wanted to do, once you have your information, let's say we're doing human body, how many different ways can you present that information? So we started making a list on the board. So, you could do an essay, you could do a poem about it, and we started making lists, and we got to over 50 different ways. Oh. And I think this is really exciting for kids to just realize, okay, once you learn some information, then you've got the choice of how do you want to present that. So, this is an immigration story in 200 words. You can present the immigration story in all kinds of different ways. But because I was working with Wing and I knew his photographs, I knew that text could be really spare. And so that went that way. I've been thinking about wanting to write a story about immigration for years. And now I just love the form this is in. It feels like, okay, 200 words. That's what we need.
You don't need any more. Well, the pictures are so powerful.
The pictures are so powerful, and I think that's one of the things that people who work with picture books, we talk about this idea of giving the illustrator room, giving the artist room. And what that means is it means fewer words. And then even once we have the art, then sometimes there's a chance to make those words even more concise.
That's true.
And I think, we were just talking about this store. This store is so wonderful because it's a tiny store and it's filled with great books. It's got more great books in it than a lot of stores that are much bigger. Yeah. And there's something about the limitation of the space that brings out really good thinking. And I think that is something that artists are fascinated by, that the limitations can provide great freedom. And I think that's what happens. That's what can happen in picture book form, is the limitations of the words can actually provide great freedom.
Yeah, like my tiny little house.
Yes.
I need to look at it that way. It's a great idea. Right. It's tiny. And there's 6 of us packed in there. It's teeny. You've seen it.
That's right.
Okay, so when you were reading this, I wanted to talk about one special page. I don't know why it just struck me. But they gave great advice, work hard. And I just love the fact that it's an older gentleman here and then like a high schooler here, and they're both basically doing the same thing. It doesn't matter your age or what you look like. They don't look the same, but they're both working hard doing the same thing. I was like, that struck me today when you read that, and I've read this story frequently today.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, you expect kids to work hard at school, right? Like, this page is all school, except for this one. It probably is a school, but it's an adult. Like, just because you grow up doesn't mean you stop working hard.
Well, and I think that's something really interesting. I mean, I think that sometimes it's the people who are new who remind us of what we need to do. Mm-hmm. And I think, going into schools these days, we got all kinds of kids who are not working hard. We kind of lost the message of working hard. And like when I was a kid, that message was around all the time. People are always saying, work hard. Mm-hmm. But now we've kind of lost that. And in some ways, it's one of the things I see when I go visit schools in other countries is, I see kids who are coming to school in language, 2 or 3 or 4. And some of those kids are working really hard. Yeah. And it's something that I think it's really important to remind ourselves of.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like they're always looking at something. Oh, I missed that. I'm so sorry. I was so in this. Thanks, Tiffany, for understanding. If you want to type that again, I'm sorry. Thank you. But I like these pictures where they're always looking. There's something behind their eyes. You can see. It's okay. Thanks, Tiffany. You can see that there's more than just it's not just blank stares. They're searching for something. They have a purpose, whether it's to prepare or provide for their family or learn a skill or or they're just tired. Who wouldn't be tired? Okay, John,
yes.
With that said, you have done some traveling.
Yes.
And so, even in your small traveling, you didn't immigrate to a different country.
No.
But, what do you feel when you're over at another country? Okay, here we go. I said that they don't do much and spoon-fed so much that they don't have to. The kids, yeah, a lot of kids today, you're right, they do, you're right, they don't have to struggle.
I think in some ways, I think it's very interesting to think about that because I think it's connected to how hard some of the grandparents worked, how hard some of the parents worked. They wanted life to be easier for the children and grandchildren. Yeah. And for a lot of those kids who it is, now the question is, now what do we do? Right. Do we just sit around and play Minecraft all day? Right. Or do we work hard at something else? Right. And so I think it's an really interesting combination. But I've had teachers tell me, I had a teacher who tell me she's been teaching for 30 years, and she said she has kids who show up who don't expect to work hard in school now. Yeah, I can see that. In a way that is really different from how it used to be. Right. So I think that's something we need to be talking about. So it's not necessarily the screens that are doing this. Screens aren't helping. Lots of screen time aren't helping, but it's a mindset. It's a mindset, and I think one of the questions kids will ask, I'll talk about making a book and how long, and then kids will raise their hand and they'll say, is it hard being an author? And there's a dichotomy in their head between something being hard and fun. Mm-hmm. Even though if you ask them, do you play a sport and do you work hard at your sport and do you love your sport, that dichotomy's gone. Right. But there is a way where kids, some kids have a predisposition to not like things that are hard. Yeah. And that's an interesting thing because we've got kids growing up in other places who don't have that. That's who true. Are interested in working hard. Most of the world. Yeah. So true. Most of the world. Yeah, okay, so you've been traveling. I've been traveling. 5 weeks in Africa. 5 countries in Africa. You did just 5 weeks in Africa? Yeah. Yeah. You just got back a couple weeks ago. Right. And you're leaving again? Tonight. Look at that. Tonight. 2 weeks in India. So. Okay, so tell us about what you experienced in a different country. Because I've traveled internationally too. So we'll see if it's the same. I think it's one of the best ways to have a sense of what it's like to be a new arrival in a country, to not know the language, to not know how things work, to not know the money, you know, and you're just like, wow, I don't know much at all. And you realize how big a decision that is for somebody to leave their country.
Mm-hmm.
And I think oftentimes for the ones who leave their country, they are thinking about the future.
Mm-hmm.
They are thinking, this may be difficult for me, but my children are going to have more choices than I have.
Yeah.
My grandchildren are going to have choices I may not even be able to imagine.
Right.
And I think that's just an incredible gift.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, when I look back and I think about, you know, what my grandparents went through.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather had tuberculosis. My mom and her brothers only got to see him one time a year. They would come down and stand outside and wave to him because he was in the sanatorium.
Oh, wow.
And they grew up in a family where there wasn't much around. They didn't have much money. But my grandma was a reader. She liked to read. And eventually, my mom and her brothers all graduated from college. My mom became the first girl in her family ever to graduate from 4 years of college. And that changed everything in our family. That totally changed my life, that happened to my mom. And it's that gift that I was trying to get at in this book.
So how do you... so I was thinking about this. When you arrive in a new country and you know you're only going to be there a short time and then you get to go back home.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about how dependent you are on somebody to help you out.
Dependent.
Oh,
Did I just
no, go ahead. You're fine.
Dependent, but also I think there's an element where each time you go to a new place, you have a choice of how protected do I want to be, and how much do I want to explore the place.
Right.
And I think that's something that I think, you know, we all make those decisions, but there's a part of it where, like, going out and wandering around Addis Ababa and
Where's that?
That's Ethiopia.
Okay.
That's capital of Ethiopia. And knowing that, okay, this is a place that it's fine to walk around, but I don't understand, you know, how things are laid out or where things are, or they just had built a new train, and I thought, I want to go ride the train. Well, I couldn't even figure out first how to get the ticket. Like, the ticket sold in a separate place, and people were coming up, and you know. And then I looked at the map, and I realized, oh man, I don't even know how to tell them where I want to go. And I was just wanting to ride the train, so I said National Museum, and the person said Stadium, and then I just said, yeah, Stadium. So it's like I was going to Stadium, even though I wasn't planning to go to Stadium. And she gave me the ticket, and I didn't think the ticket would cost that much, so I had some money ready. And it cost so much less than I even was expecting. It cost 10 cents for a train ticket.
Yeah.
And then I got on the train, and it was just packed. Like, the door opened.
What a cool experience. Definitely.
And before people were even getting off, everybody started going on. And you just realize, you've got to do that. You've got to do it how things are done there.
Yep.
And it was almost like, okay, you know, everybody pushes in, and
Right.
then you're on this kind of
Right.
But, I mean, I think there's something where when you're in a new place, you just realize how much there is to learn about being in a new place. You could spend the rest of your life. I mean, I'm married to someone who's an immigrant, and she's still learning about what America is like. Yeah,
and
you know,
because
there's
many years.
many years. You know, 22 years now. But there's always layers to that, and I think that's part of what makes makes arriving in a new place so interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. When we were in Thailand, I just have to tell this story because it's so cute. We were in Thailand with a whole bunch of expats, which means people outside of the U.S. who are U.S. citizens. There was a whole bunch of little kids with us, and we were walking down the streets to get from the restaurant back to the hotel because going out to eat is ridiculously cheap.
Yes.
And so we're walking back to the hotel, and there's this little 3-year-old in front of us, and he goes, and you do this, you just walk out in the streets, and if there's a car there, you do this. Yeah. And he would do that, and I'm like, wow, oh my word, you're 3 years old, you're so cute, and you could die, but okay.
Yeah. No, one of my favorite stories in that is, in India, it's even wilder. You don't even put your hands up. you just walk out into the traffic.
Oh.
And like weave around.
It flows around you like water. But you have to trust that, because there's no break.
Right.
If you wait for the break, you're never going to cross.
Right.
Oh.
So you just enter in and it just goes around you. And there was one teacher who had arrived and like she just couldn't believe that. And so she was on the corner and she wanted to cross the street. And she ended up getting a tuk-tuk, one of the little taxis.
We had those in.
And she took it to cross the street.
That's awesome.
You know? But then after a while, she realized, no, you just walk in and it goes around you like water. You know?
You just have to take that first step. You have to do it.
That's right. Yeah.
Tuk-tuks are hilarious. They're little, like, not bicycles. They're not the same as
They're three-wheeled.
Yeah, they're like these little go-karts on three wheels and a cover.
Like a little tiny taxi.
Yeah. So she took it across the street.
And they just become big all over the world now. Like they just had them in Nigeria, you know. They got them in Guatemala, you know.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
So how often have you been able to travel?
I try and do a visit to international schools. I try and do a couple of those a year.
Okay.
And you know, I let schools know that I live in Minnesota, and so November, December, January, February, March, those are all fine times. Those are all fine times. Yeah.
Especially March, because we're like, come on, spring. Like, where are you?
Well, yeah, come on, spring, and then especially the color. You know, like I think one of the things I just noticed is just how long it takes for us to get color.
At us.
Yeah, you know, like we're not close to having color. We know that. And one year we went to Toronto, like at Easter time, and Toronto had flowers up.
Toronto is more south than we are.
I know, but it's like it just didn't feel fair that Canada gets the color before we do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, okay. Are you taking their great gift to India tonight? Is that what you're doing a lot of your speaking and teaching on?
I am, because
that is cold, yeah.
You know, the school I'm going to be at, they will have kids from 40 different countries.
Okay.
And so this is a story that the kids really respond strongly to.
Yeah, talk about that, because it's kind of an immigration story to the U.S.
Yes.
But you're going to be, like, in India.
Yeah, and there's no place in the text that talks about the U.S.
Okay.
You know, this is true for Canada. This is true for lots of places. There's lots of places where people are moving right now, and the millions of people in the world who are doing that, it's just enormous. But one of the things that's interesting is for kids in the international schools, this is the story in their family. Because they are often ones who have
They're
moved.
the ones who moved, yeah. That makes sense.
And in India, it's particularly fascinating because one of the big groups of kids is kids who were born in America, but their parents were born in India. So the parents had come to the United States for opportunity.
Okay.
Now have moved back, seeing great opportunity in India.
So they're Indian nationals that were born here? So
That the parents were born in India, then came to the United States. The kids were born here.
So they're citizens here.
Yes. Now they're going back. And then people say, oh, well, your grandparents are Indian, your parents are Indian. But the adjustment is still huge for these kids because they're like New York kids, or they like baseball, or they don't know how to play cricket or something.
Right.
But it's really interesting that these parents are seeing greater opportunity in India right now. And it's just, you know, it's just in the air there, you know, like, you know, going back and opening some new company that's like Amazon is here in India.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, but so that being able to talk with this book, and over when we worked on the text, Wing particularly wanted it to be as broad as possible to encompass as many of the stories of people arriving in a new country as possible. So it's not necessarily about immigrants arriving who are poor. You know, that had been in the text originally. My family came here from far away because they were poor. That was my story. My ancestors were poor. But Wing was pointing out not everybody who comes is poor. And so over and over we made decisions to try and broaden that text to make it as expansive as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, you saying that about the Indian kids going back to India, you gave me a bunch of copies, and
Yes.
I sent them to China, or
Yes.
to Thailand for all my friends who are in China. And I got a comment back from a mom because they're coming back for home assignment for a year and then probably moving
Yes.
on from there. And she's like, this is perfect because they're coming from China where they look different and they sound different, but they're coming back here. So, like, it's a big adjustment for them to come back here, just like the Indian
That's right.
kids. So,
That's
yeah.
right. And when we're talking about travel, the one other thing is, I think there's something incredibly valuable to be on a street and be the only person on the street who's got the color of skin you have.
Mm-hmm.
That is very, very helpful for understanding what it's like for other people.
Yeah.
Or to just be walking in a city for an hour and realize, I haven't seen anybody with white skin in an hour.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real way where I think it can help people understand things in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hold on, I think I have a couple other things I want to chat about. I know you've told me this in you and me talking, but how did the research come about?
This research on this has just been one of the things that I've been interested in for years. I grew up in a family where people talked about the people who had come, and I think that's very interesting. I think in families, it tends to go one of two ways.
Mm-hmm.
People either pass down those stories and talk about it, or people are in a rush to be as American as possible and don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up in a family where people talked about it, and people were interested, and my dad liked telling those stories, my mom liked telling those stories, my uncle told those stories, and they saved stuff. So I could look at letters from when they arrived. My uncle lives in Duluth, and he's got one of the chests that came over on the boat, and it's just full of stuff. And I feel so grateful that I grew up in a family where people save stuff, because it's a real way of directly connecting with that.
Yeah.
And that research to me was fascinating because I think so much gets passed down. I think being a arrival in a new country, being an immigrant, I think it's such a challenging experience that I think it gets passed down for generations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that I'm still interested in my life, and maybe trying to pass a little bit less. I think being an immigrant, it can be disorienting. I think you can feel really confused. I think you can feel some shame about not knowing more about how things work. And I think some of it gets passed down to kids and grandkids. And I think that's always been fascinating to me. So the research on it was really interesting.
You're like the second generation then, or
Third. Yeah.
Because your parents were born in the States.
My parent and my grandparent.
And your grandma was. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So some people call that fourth. Yeah. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But that's one of the things we really wanted to talk about in the book, was how, whether your family came 150 years ago or whether your family came last week, some of what happens has real strong similarities. And sometimes we forget that.
And it might have been easier to come a long time ago. Not because, conveniences were easier, but sometimes you came with a group of people that spoke your language.
And a lot of times people still do that now.
Okay.
A lot of people arrive in the same place.
Oh, like refugees.
Yeah. I remember years ago I did a project at a school in western Minnesota, out in Montevideo.
I know Montevideo.
Great project because we had kindergartners and seniors writing about the same topic. And they were writing about different things. And then what was really interesting was that most of the seniors did not know English when they started school.
Oh, that's cool.
And we were talking about, we've got kids who don't know English when they're starting school. They just speak Spanish. most of the seniors were speaking Norwegian or Swedish.
or-
And it's
German.
so interesting how their stories were so similar
That's
in
really
some
neat.
ways to what the kindergartner's story was. It was just a different language.
So they probably had to do a lot of the translating back then too, like
That's
they
right.
do now.
That's right. And they could really empathize with these kids because they realized how starting school and not knowing the language school is in, how hard that is.
Yeah.
And I see that in some of these international schools. I mean, I just had a kid who was, he was at the school in Tanzania, which teaches in English, and he was Norwegian, and he didn't know any English at all. And his dad was telling me the refuge for him had been the library. He just came to the library. He loves comics. He just kept reading comics in English.
Wow.
And now his English is really good. In that 1 year,
Yeah.
he's developed his
that's-
English from reading, Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Like it's almost like magic.
It's almost like magic.
Yeah.
It is, yep.
Okay, so let's talk about some of your favorite books.
Okay, I've got some favorite books. This is a favorite one of two guys I know, Moo by David LaRochelle and Mike Winutka. And Mike's got a wonderful story because he just had been at Stillwater Prison and he read Moo to prisoners. And it's about stealing a car and lying to the police. So I highly recommend
That is
Moo.
awesome. I think everybody that I've had on so far has recommended Moo.
Okay, this
That's
is
awesome.
great. This is a new book called Voice of Freedom, Fannie Lou Hammer, and I think that's terrific. New artist who I think is wonderful.
Is it an award winner?
Oh, an award winner, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, Prince, I would check that book out. We've got Ellen Penguin Stick Together.
You
by
guys
Megan
know
Maynard.
Megan.
Go Megan. We've got the great Vonda Nelson, who did a bunch of research on this bookstore in Harlem that a relative of hers owned, and now has written this picture book called The Book Itch, Freedom, Truth, and Harlem's Greatest Bookstore, illustrated by the great Gregory Christie. I would recommend that. And then we'll also say this, Dad's First Day, Dad's Got Problems on First Day of School, and this is by Mike Winutka, and this is a book that Mike both wrote and illustrated.
And this is the one that Mike illustrated.
That's right. And so those are all favorites. And then what do I have here? I've got a new young adult novel called Gap Life.
And
it
who is
just
that
came
by?
yesterday. And it's going to be out in November.
Oh.
And we have a new cover, and I love what the designer did with that cover.
Look
So,
at that! You
yeah.
guys are all the first to see the new color
First to
of
see
John's new book.
Yeah, about a kid whose parents will pay for college if he studies what they want, and that's not what he wants.
Got it.
That's that story.
And then this one I wanted to mention is the most recent, other than Their Great Gift. That one's more recent, but this is his other newer picture book, Game Changer. And is this the one about the secret game?
This is about a game that was played in North Carolina, and it was kept secret for 50 years. Mm-hmm. And when kids hear that, they just want to know that story.
What year was it? 44?
44, yep. It was a team from Duke who claimed they were the best basketball team in the state, and somebody said, "You're not even the best basketball you're not even the best basketball team in the city." And they arranged a secret game on a Sunday morning when everybody was at
And
church.
so whoever wins is at the end of the story. So you have to read this book to find out who wins if you don't know.
That, and then to find out what happens after they played
Yeah.
the first game, which is even more remarkable in North Carolina in 1944.
That's so cool. So really, the game it's who wins. That's great. But really, like why is this book called Game Changers more than because of the game?
Yes. Yes.
I cried when I read this book. Oh, Joy! Joy's my partner in crime, and Anne is too, and she loves this book. That's awesome.
Yeah, crying we like. Crying is good.
Yes, crying is releasing. You've all learned this from Inside Out the movie. It's good to cry. Okay. Well, we should probably wrap up. I'm here, just terrible connection on my end. Okay, well, Kara, you can hit the replay because we are going to wrap up Thank you all for coming. Thank you, John, for
Oh, thank
being
you all.
here.
Just great way on a little snowy Minnesota day
Yes,
to sit in
exactly.
and talk books.
And good luck with your trip to India.
Thank you.
You're
Thanks, Donna.
welcome.
Thanks for all you do.
And they say thank you and bye and loved it and smiles.
Okay, thank you.
Let's do this. Come on.